Hey everyone, how are you all doing? Hope you've had a good day, morning, or evening. Because I know PlayStation fanboys haven't. I know I promised maybe an Xbox fanboy assault video, but there isn't really much going on with them. But I can say, without a doubt, the next video will not be about PlayStation. But with all that out of the way, let's go back to Final Fantasy XIV coming to Xbox. Because fanboys don't like that more people get to play a Final Fantasy game. And they most certainly don't like to see Xbox succeed in any area or even try to compete, even though the PlayStation fanboys have said for a long time, Xbox needs to compete. And now what are they doing? They are following in the footsteps of PlayStation's business strategy and strengthening relationships with companies that were, to say the least, not that strong. But as always, PlayStation fanboys are not having a good month. Starfield is right around the corner, and whether or not that's good or bad, I still get to make content out of it. So let's get into the video, and let's go take a look at Dreamcast Guy.
I'm actually a bit shocked right now because we just got a big confirmation from Microsoft themselves that future Final Fantasy games are coming to Xbox. Over the course of this last couple months, Square Enix has really been pumping out the games on PlayStation.
Now personally I have to ask, what is so bad about Xbox getting to play Final Fantasy, or future Final Fantasy titles? Because Square Enix and Xbox both make money, it's a win-win situation. And then, maybe just maybe, PlayStation fanboys will flex that they either sell more copies on PlayStation, or flex that Square Enix gets to make money off of Xbox. You know, what a fucking weird world fanboys live in. But those are things I expect them to do. But at the end of the day, I don't know how people get to this conclusion that more people playing a game is a bad thing. You're only introducing more people to either a game that has not been released on that platform, or a franchise that has never been released. Or in this case, it's an MMO, JRPG, that has never been on Xbox.
I mean, not just Final Fantasy 16, but also Final Fantasy Theater Rhythm, games like Octopath Traveler 2. There's been a bunch of exclusives that have been coming from Square Enix to everything except Xbox. Now, a lot of us assumed that, it seemed like maybe Sony was paying Square Enix not to release games on the Xbox.
Which they have. Both Xbox and PlayStation do this to each other all the time, to incentivize either getting that console to play that game, or getting into their ecosystem to play that game. Case in point would be Starfield, as PlayStation tried to acquire the exclusivity rights to only have Starfield on their platform, as either a timed or a permanent exclusive to their platform.
Or maybe, there was some sort of weird communication error where they didn't like putting games on Xbox. Well, it turns out none of that is the case. Let's talk about this new announcement, the surprise reveal, and why this is a big deal.
Yes, Final Fantasy XIV coming to Xbox for the first time is such a big deal. I 100% agree. I've even considered wanting to pick it up. All sarcasm aside, I do believe that there is an audience on Xbox, as a lot of the people I spoke to when I still played Xbox did take an interest in playing Final Fantasy games.
Dawntrail and how this is going to reinvent the game next year, freaking Phil Spencer walked onto the stage. Now, to say my jaw dropped on the floor would be an understatement.
Most fanboys, I'm sure, absolutely lost their mind that Xbox finally gets to play a Final Fantasy on their newest console. On top of that, a highly regarded one.
This is the most random thing ever. Xbox's Phil Spencer comes out and shakes hands with Yoshi P. This is the...
Honestly, it did catch me off guard. I won't lie about that. Seeing Phil Spencer get on stage and actually work with members and the higher-ups with Square Enix is quite interesting, as I'm curious how Sony will react and what they will do, as I've always seen Square Enix and Sony working together as a permanent thing. They've been doing it for so long, and they might as well get acquired by Sony. If I were in Sony's position, I would try my damned hardest to get Square Enix before Phil Spencer starts spending more money.
Director of Final Fantasy 16 and also undeniably the guy that saved Final Fantasy 14, maybe the person that saved Square Enix overall, and that's not an exaggeration. This is the president of Square Enix, and they're hanging out with Phil Spencer. Never Did I ever expect this in a million years?
I know, this is pretty big for you, Dreamcast guy. Instead of making a video on some obscure tweet, you've got some pretty big news that I think a lot of us are pretty interested by. Hear me out, what if I start a rumor on Twitter that, apparently, with showing very little evidence, Rockstar is going to be bought by PlayStation, and they're going to make Red Dead Redemption 3 exclusive, and I guarantee you, Dreamcast guy will make a video on it, claiming that this could be true. It would be a pretty funny prank, if that didn't already happen.
It is absolutely bonkers. Square Enix's CEO says, starting with today's announcements of Final Fantasy XIV coming in 2024, whenever possible, we're planning to bring our games to Xbox for players to enjoy.
Even though I'm not mentioning Dreamcast guy when I talk about this, as he is by far not one of those people that really gives a shit, but I will always find it surprising that fanboys think it's a bad thing that more people get to play games. I'm looking at you in particular, Nicola. Every time I go onto my feed on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, I don't know, it looks like a porn site now, I see always fanboys going at each other for playing games that everyone should be able to play. And they get pissed when people from other platforms get to play it. And this will always be a thing with them. As much as we don't like them, they will continue to do it. And these are pretty much coming from the same PlayStation fanboys that preach that Final Fantasy deserves to be a PlayStation exclusive permanently.
Phil Spencer says, we're looking forward to building on the relationship that we've had established in bringing Final Fantasy XIV to Xbox and partnering closely with you for future Square Enix games.
I'm sure the last part of that clip, when PlayStation fanboys read that tweet, they fucking lost it. I mean, future Square Enix games are coming to Xbox, PlayStation, and wherever else they can put them. I mean, hey, there's no wrong there. Only big ups for Square Enix and making more money.
But what does this look like? Does that mean that Final Fantasy XVI is going to come next year? Does that mean there was never an exclusivity contract?
I'm under the firm belief that Sony will continue their exclusivity with Final Fantasy if they can work out a deal. But I'm sure Sony has something figured out to counter this, as both them and Square Enix have had such a really good relationship with each other over the years. I'm sure they will easily find something out. As if they didn't, they've obviously found a reason that continuing that business practice with Sony is not profitable enough to continue it. I am under the firm belief that exclusivity is bad, but on the other hand, timed exclusivity is best of both worlds. They get it first, but we still get it at a later date, and they could be continuing that way. Which, either way, we still get the games, we just have to wait a bit longer, which I am absolutely fine with.
Sony lent developers, they lent tech stuff to actually make sure that 16 ran as good as possible on the PS5. It's going to be curious, are we going to see the Final Fantasy VII Remake, Part 2, Part 1 coming to Xbox?
I would hope so, as Xbox players haven't gotten to play all of them. And I'm sure anyone that's a fan of the franchise would love to play any of the Final Fantasies they can get their hands on.
So a lot of people are afraid because, 14, Final Fantasy in general, is so massive in Asia, in China, in freaking Japan. I think they're a little bit nervous. They're like, okay, if we put this on Xbox, are we losing money?
What the fuck are you on about, Dreamcast guy? They're not removing it from any platform. It's just coming to Xbox. It means people in the West that predominantly play on Xbox, like me, get to play the games. Shocker. They're not removing it from anyone. They're not taking it away from any individual from any other platform at this point. It's just more people get to play the game. I don't know how you can spin that into a bad thing. It's a company making more money by putting games that aren't usually on that platform on a platform.
This is so baffling. Good on Xbox. This is a W.
I'm not surprised. I expect Xbox to be pulling their punches. That's why they're in the top 3, whether or not they're coming last or not. But that is it for Dreamcast Guy's video. He seems pretty reasonable. He seems pretty happy that Xbox is getting to play Final Fantasy. But at the end of the day, we still have to criticize some of his more shittier points. But let's move on to some fanboys coping. As always, we have to start off strong with J-Dub. There's always something special about him showing up on the channel, because each time he shows up, he finds a way to contradict himself only a month earlier from what he said. The one problem is, he tweets so often, it's so fucking hard to crawl my ass that back on the timeline just to find one tweet. At this point, they should make Twitter/X a PlayStation exclusive. One fanbase is gearing up to play the biggest game release of the year, while the other is getting excited about a PS3 game getting announced for their console. You better hope to God Spider-Man is an absolutely godly game. This is pretty much the only game you and the rest of the PlayStation fanboys have been riding on for the entire year. This better be the second coming of Jesus. This better be the fountain of youth of all games. If it isn't, I am going to make sure you know that for the rest of your days, that this game was not as you said it was going to be. And this is not just for you PlayStation fanboys, this also goes to you Xbox fanboys. If you sit there and tell me that Starfield is going to be the greatest game to ever exist, and then it comes out absolutely dogshit, I am coming for you. Your ass better run. I don't think you would want the funny schizo-Australian For Honor player to come after you. That would be scary. Who knows what he's going to do? Ah, finally, a tweet from MBG. It's been a hot minute. Good to see you again. Sony trying to decide if they should just pull the trigger and acquire Square Enix. If only he knew that Xbox kind of made that harder. But if they did, they get to do whatever they want with Final Fantasy. If they do, I think that's not bad at all. As long as they keep it multi-plat, I have no care in the world who owns it. And that leads us all to the end of the video. There is nothing more to cover about this little situation. I know I'm a bit late to it, but because I have stuff going on right now in the real world, and it requires a lot more attention, I will tell you next video, as I should be able to get out another video, and if not, I'll make a community post. So with all that being said, boys, you all take care, have a great day.